Welcome back to The Independence. It's pretty trendy to be a libertarian in Congress nowadays, but it can also be very divisive. In an era of unmatched spending and zealous application of government power, there are some surprising voices rising up from the Capitol. Thomas Massie is a Kentucky congressman who shares some of our views when it comes to limiting the scope of government. Welcome, Congressman.
Thank you. Great to be on your show.
Well, thanks for coming. Your colleague Mike Rogers, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, thinks journalist Glenn Greenwald is pushing stolen material that he got from Edward Snowden. Is this an irresponsible statement on the part of Mike Rogers?
I don't know. They've thrown a lot of Jello at the wall. First they said the Chinese were involved, then they said the Russians were involved, and now I haven't heard about this latest piece of Jello they've thrown at the wall, but I think they're just trying to see what sticks.
You are in the Liberty Movement caucus, have been pretty strong on this kind of NSA surveillance stuff, Edward Snowden revelations. It's a big split between the Mike Rogerses of the world and the Peter Kings of the world. Who's in the middle that's waffling right now? Are you starting to sway hearts and minds of people who traditionally had been very, very hawkish and protective of the national security state?
I think we're swaying a lot of minds, and it's really the American public that's swaying the minds. You know, we had a vote. Justin Amash was the primary sponsor of an amendment that would have defunded what we think is unconstitutional spying. I was a co-sponsor of that amendment. It almost passed the House. But since then, we've had members come to us and say, if you could get that to a vote again, we would vote for it, because we went back to our districts and we heard from our people and we're ready to vote for it. You know, you mentioned the chairman. One thing that I want to tell people that I've observed from being on the other side of the curtain here and being in Congress is there's a lot of power concentrated with the chairman of the Select Intelligence Committee. When the president goes out on the news and says that everybody in Congress knew about this program, what he really meant to say is he told the chairman of the Select Intelligence Committee this, and it was up to the chairman to decide. And he's actually withholding quite a bit of information from members of Congress. I think our founding fathers would be appalled to know that only one person in Congress gets to know this information, and the rest of our elected officials can't see it.
Well, Congressman, is there an appetite to do something about the amount of secrecy that is on Capitol Hill?
There's a tremendous appetite from the public, but also on Capitol Hill. You know, even Jim Sensenbrenner, the author, the primary sponsor of the Patriot Act, now has a bill to rein in the Patriot Act. He says he never imagined it would be interpreted by the administration this way. In fact, he was assured this wouldn't happen, and now it has happened, his greatest fears. So he's a sponsor of a bill that has some reforms in there. What we need is more visibility for Congress into what's going on with this law and the FISA courts. Can you imagine if our founding fathers knew that we had secret courts that were making secret decisions and elected officials couldn't see those decisions? That's where we are today. But fortunately, there is an appetite here in Congress to reform that, just not among the leadership and the chairman of a few of these committees. We need to change their opinions on these things.
Well, as more states contemplate things like legalizing marijuana, there are more discussions about drug policy, particularly in sentencing and mandatory minimums for nonviolent offenders. How much leeway do judges have, and can Congress do anything to make their job easier?
You know, this is a bipartisan issue. I'm on a bill with Congressman Bobby Scott from Virginia. He's a Democrat, member of the Congressional Black Caucus. We're trying to give judges more flexibility in sentencing. We don't think that Congress has the right answer for all of these sentences. It really should be up to the judges to decide. And on the point of marijuana, you know, I haven't come out in favor of legalization or even legalization for medical uses.
You can do it now. It's fine, right here on the show, if you like to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, nobody's watching, but no, what I did want to say is we had a really big victory in the Farm Bill that was buried back on page 699, if you can get to that page. We got industrial hemp legalized in the Farm Bill. That's a big, huge victory. We got a definition of industrial hemp that separates it from its cousin in the cannabis family, marijuana, and this will allow states to do pilot programs to start testing the viability of industrial hemp in this country, although we already know it's viable and has many uses.
Yes, especially other people who serve in your part of the country. So that is the one piece of good news to come out of such a porky piece of legislation. Well, Congressman, let me ask you one last thing. On Friday, we are doing a show, Living Off the Grid, where we talk about survivalism, we talk about prepping, and we know that you are a huge fan of living off the grid. Tell me about your love of this lifestyle, briefly, if you could.
Well, yeah, I live off the grid. My whole family's set up. It's awesome. If you've ever been to Monticello and seen Thomas Jefferson's place, I can't imagine that guy running high voltage lines to his farm. If he had solar panels back then, he would be making his own electricity. That's what I do. Again, my farm is kind of like Galt's Gulch, except we've got kids there too.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming by. We appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Well, if